you talking to us?
Yeah. So firstly, thank you all so much to all the performers and to Christian and to Raymond. Christian actually contacted me about performing at the symposium today, and I was absolutely delighted to get your email because it was really important, I think, to have this performance as part of the symposium when we're discussing, disability and performance. And the specifically we've been talking today about, the politics behind casting and the casting of actors or of non-disabled actors in disabled roles. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the casting process behind No Magic Pills. Did you audition, or did you approach people?
We did audition. We when we applied to the Arts Council to do this development phase of kind of 3 workshop weeks, we proposed working with casting disabled actors for the parts of the characters who had disabilities, while also realising that was going to be a big obstacle because there isn't a pool of such actors around. There haven't been the training or opportunities. So we were aware of that and concerned that we just wouldn't be able to. So we kind of put out a casting call through the Disability Network, through the Centre for Independent Living Dublin, which is the organisation that Martin was one of the founders of back in 1992. And generally through the Disability Network, and we had one kind of audition stay. The response was I think we had a response from about five people, and then we saw Paddy and Rhona, and we were concerned that we just were struggling for example, in the case of the character that Peter's playing, a character with cerebral palsy. We didn't want to cast a non-disabled actress, particularly in that part, and we wanted to use an actor with cerebral palsy. So Peter's on board as our disability consultant and our dramaturg, and we kind of said, Peter, can you also, because we knew he'd be great, and he is. So he stepped into that role, which was good, and we decided to kind of work with that cast and just go for it, because we kind of figured we could spend forever trying to cast it and not find the actors, and that's part of what we want to do with the play. Because another thought we had was, will we go to the UK, which is much more progressive, where there's theatre companies like Grey Eye that was set up by and for actors with disabilities, and we thought, well, it's an Irish play, it's an Irish story, and we want to kind of build capacity in Ireland as well. In terms of if this play has a legacy, that would be part of it, that you bring Irish actors who are also coming from a certain background and disability experience, which is different from the UK anyway. And wouldn't that be an exciting thing to try and achieve with this? So that's what we've set out to do. And I know from working on this other project, Sanctuary, that I know that the trail blazed by Blue Teapot in working with and training up many actors with intellectual disabilities over the years, that if the opportunity is provided and the training is provided, that the response is there, the talent is there, and in a way, so you know that this can work. Now, with physical disability, it's much more in the dark ages in Ireland, but nevertheless, so that's on a ground that we want to try and help break, I suppose. So that's where we are at present.
Absolutely, thank you very much. Are there any more questions from the audience?
Is the full draft done, or is there more drafts to do?
There's always more. There's always more drafts to do. Like, it's come on. Like the first. I mean, Peter referenced this morning. He very kindly called the first draft kind of like a piece of disability history. It was like a documentary, and it was kind of too sanitized, and it was kind of rubbish. And the first workshop we did a few years ago with that involved Mark and Julie and Raymond directing, that was in 2017. That really kind of showed that didn't work at all. And then the subsequent workshops have continued to, you keep developing it. So after each workshop, I found myself doing another draft of the play and so forth. It's hard for you guys to get a sense of its shape, and in a way it feels episodic in its current form, when we're jumping around particularly. And I suppose ideally would present the whole play in its entirety, and then you just see whether, because there's a character journey at the heart of it, which you can see from the character of Martin, who's a reluctant political animal or activist, and who then takes it on in a very aggressive way ultimately, and the choice he has to make is between the pursuit of the collective goal and the pursuit of an individual dream, going to America, and there's a choice between the pursuit of the collective and love, in fact. And in a way, one of the inspirations for that is the film It's a Wonderful Life, which I love that journey of the character of George Bailey, who wants to travel the world but keeps getting drawn back into a higher purpose. So there's a shape that you don't really feel when you see what we've shown you, but that's what really needs to work in the play, if the play is to work ultimately. So I'll keep working at that till it does.
Could you talk a little bit, Christian, about how you found the language for the play? And, for example, as I understand it, with Sanctuary, there's a verbatim element to the way that you wrote that play. And has that been the case here, or how have you approached the script?
Well, in the case of say Sanctuary, we did a series of workshops, and like Sanctuary is about relationships and the obstacles to relationships with people with intellectual disabilities. And so we sat around in a circle, and Paddy, the artistic director of Blue Teapot, said, "Okay, guys, let's talk about sex." Bang, and off we went. And I set down my notebook, and there was all kinds of lines that emerged. Like, for example, someone said, if I was to be in a relationship, it would have to be with someone else with Down syndrome. So that became a line in the play, and so forth. So in that sense, a lot of those lines became verbatim, and I knew they were authentic because they come directly from the actors. And in the case of this play, my own connection to physical disability came through like 20 odd years ago. I was struggling as a writer during one of the many times I was struggling as a writer, and I needed a job. And I got a job working for the Centre for Independent Living as a communications officer, which effectively was a lobbyist. And so I met and worked with all these guys. I met with like Naughton, Ursula, Dermo, Walsh, Mick, McCabe, and all these kind of activists. And it was a time of like I tend to think of it as like the 1916 War of Independence for the Irish disability community, and that Martin Naughton was their kind of Michael Collins. And you know, when you look back on it 20 years later, you realise they were really important activists, and many of whom, including Martin and Dermot and Ursula, have since passed away. But I suppose I was grounded in their language for the 2 years that I worked for them, and subsequently in staying in touch. And also then I think as well, a big influence in the play has been Peter in respect of the language. Not of the language of the play specifically, and also the kind of encouragement to make it my own, to set myself free, to not be so faithful to the actuality of what happened, which helps in the writing of characters who feel more authentic. But it's great having Peter on board, because there's a sense that if there's any bum note, Peter spots it and we get rid of it. So you feel that it gives you that confidence, which is the same confidence I have with Sanctuary, that I kind of knew whatever people would think of the play, they couldn't say it was inauthentic because the actors had said, yeah, this is coming from us, you know. So it's been a different process, but nevertheless one that I hope feels authentic, you know.
Thank you very much for your performance today. It was really engaging in the way you bring to the fore practical aspects of what it means to bear disability, and how we do organize our lives every day outside of the theatre and in the theatre to be more human. My father had muscular dystrophy, so I'm very familiar with the challenges of having a disability. I just want to bring to the discussion the idea of bearing deviant physicalities, and share with you that in Greece, where I come from, there is a law, 370 actually, that prohibits anyone with disability from sitting for exams to enter into any acting school. And this law was waived 2 years ago, and because you mentioned actually that Ireland is in the Middle Ages. 2 years ago this law was waived, and nowadays people that want to become actors and actresses can sit for exams, but only in private acting schools. So they are barred from entering, let's say, the national theatre. So I'm thinking of this deviant physicalities phrasing, and I'm wondering, you know, how the body becomes deviant on so many different levels here, against the law, against all these challenges that we face. And I would like to ask you, in terms of statistics, if there are any professional actors or actresses in Ireland that have disability friendlier theatres as spaces themselves for people with disabilities and for somebody that aspires to become.
Yeah, in terms of numbers, there are a number of individual professional actors with different impairments, but they're not actually collected together like in the UK. You have grey eye, in Edinburgh you have theatre workshop. We don't have that. In terms of how friendly, we don't have law against. Yeah, but we do. But maybe it might be easier if we had, because the Irish theatre community, in my experience, is not very open to having disabled actors. You know, there's a feeling that non-disabled actors have the right to play disabled characters, and that if we take that off them, we're interfering with the aesthetic and the dramatic process. So that's what I was saying earlier, that it's beyond equality, beyond equity, but what we're here trying here to explore is having disabled actors on stage with non-disabled actors like Mark playing disabled characters, and we want that to be obvious, to show that there's a need for disabled actors to be build up the capacity of a cohort to take their places. So, yeah, I'd say the Irish, my own experience, the Irish theatre community is not particularly even thinking about it. So I said earlier, we had 2 plays, Richard III, we had the Cripple Orange Man, and then we had the Glass Menagerie in 3 major theatres. And it doesn't even cross my mind to look and build up a pool of disabled actors. Never mind writers and producers and directors.
Can I just add into that? So I work with a company, all of the performers have an intellectual disability, and when I started doing that work, whenever we would present our work, the performers would present their work, there was no question of them being paid. But in the last 4 to 5 years, partly through my own pushing, but partly just because things have changed slightly, attitudes have changed in Ireland, every performance that we do, the performers are paid, and I don't have to even push for it, I don't even have to ask for it, it's just if they're performing their work that they're paid, which is slightly different, but you know, it just shows there's a slight different, there's a change in temperature, there's a shift in perception, and there's a shift in how disabled artists are viewed.
If I could add to that as well, just in relation, because Rachel and myself have a similar background, because my background is actually dance. So I set up my first integrated dance company when I was 18, and that was when it wasn't even heard of in Ireland for a person with a disability to dance. I mean, when I had that idea when I left school, people were just laughing at me, they thought it was hilarious. So I set up my first company at 18, and then I set up a second integrated dance company called Coughlan when I was 30 with another lady, and so it's integrative. And we had the same, but we had to push we had the same experience as Rachel and as Peter is saying as well. We had to constantly push to make sure all our performers got paid, and the onus was on us as a company to make sure it was accessible. It wasn't the other way around. The onus was on us to make sure it worked. So when we were speaking to different theatre groups, and not different theatre groups, but different places and stagings and things, we actually wrote it in to our agreement and in our policy that we wouldn't perform somewhere unless it was completely accessible for us. So, but the onus was on us, but it just became part of the language.
And do you feel that changed then? Do you feel that's changed recently?
It as Peter so beautifully said today, it's better in dance. It's better in dance performance, that it's more acceptable now, I suppose, because companies like Coughlan and what you've done have gone before. But in terms of theatre, from what I'm hearing from the lads, because my background is not acting, I'm new to it. It's better for dance than for theatre. yeah, but it has improved a lot, in terms of dance.
Can I add to that though? Like, I have a theatre company here in Galway, and I'm the token disabled person. Yay. But I find in theatre in general, doesn't matter if you're able-bodied, disabled, whatever, it is hard to pay actors. And it's just like, if you're lucky to get funding of some sort, like, it's just hard to get paid. It's just hard to get paid.
But the only thing is, we have 3 major productions the last 6 months with disabled characters. And none of those companies even thought about looking for disabled actors.
True.
And it's interesting actually, because now you're actually genuinely making me smile in terms of dance. When we set up Coughlan, we were like quite tokenistic as well, because nobody was doing it. I was the only person with a disability getting in and out of my wheelchair backwards. So people were flinging money at us. They were literally flinging money at us because it was so weird and so unusual for its time and so different for its time. So it's not as easy now to get funding as it was before, but it is kind of the tokenistic thing that you're speaking about.
Can I ask you, what's the plan for the magic program in time to go and see you?
Well, we're planning to we want to stage it next year. And we're in the midst of preparing a production funding application, which will be submitted sometime in July probably. We're talking to various partners like potential partners like Dublin Theatre Festival, Galway 2020 we'd love to be part of. And then we've got existing partners like the Town Hall have been fantastic, Fergal's been brilliant. Also Galway City Council, James Harold's been great. Galway County Council, Sharon O'Grady has been great. They've been really terrific partners, and there's a real sense of made in Galway about it. We've got Eamon Howley over here, who's a friend of mine from Galway, who's also supporting it and trying to see if there's any interest in private support commercially. So that's really grateful for Eamon's efforts. So there's a real sense of Galway being behind it. So Galway 2020 would be a partner if we could get into that. And we're just going to keep. We've also got a lot of support from international disability activists and. For example, the Centre for Independent Living Dublin, which is now renamed the Independent Living Movement Ireland, are terrific supporters of ours. Disability Federation of Ireland, and so forth. Also the Civic in Tala, the Axis in Ballymun, and the Pavilion as well. So we've got, and we're knocking on various other doors. So what we hope to do is get enough. We need to get a couple of 1 or 2 big partners, and we want to do a big open call application. What we want to do is stage the play, but also use the play as a catalyst for a conversation about the very conversation we're having now, with between the disabled community and the non-disabled community, and in terms of the very fact that like Martin Naughton was a maverick, and he revolutionised the Irish disability movement to an extent, but the vast majority of disabled people in Ireland remain in the shadows, like remain marginalised, don't have personal assistance access or funding, live in institutions still, or are dependent on family members, and aren't part of a revolution because they're not aware that there ought to be one. So we'd love the play to be a way of having that conversation, in a way. So that's our kind of our grand ambition for it. So we just sort of see whether or not we can achieve that, but certainly that's what we want to do.
It's a worthy ambition, and we really hope to see you all on the stage soon.
Can I ask just if there's any comments in terms of like what you saw?
Yeah, any feedback?
Or what you might have got from it, or things that might have, I don't know, you might have had a reaction to in whatever way, or like just what you thought, what sort of story you were getting. If anybody has any just observations, however obvious or not.
I was really struck by the vulnerability of the puppet.
Yeah.
It really struck me, and I felt quite emotional.
The puppet was the best actor.
Absolutely true.
And just about we're quite conscious about the noise and about the metal and the calibre, the crooked. So the puppet is not only a puppet of disabled person, a disabled character. It's the whole paraphernalia and noise that went with that in the 60s and 70s. Where the paraphernalia took over the person. So it's great that had that impact, yeah. And some of the things you were doing, I'm not sure they work. Is, as I was saying this morning, it's a risk. It might be a mistake, but we're going to do it.
The bit with the tape, I don't know if I know what you were trying to get at. It just like I don't mind an able-bodied person sitting in a wheelchair wheeling around, or even the way like Inside Out Dancing, the way that I forget the actor's name was doing CP. I don't mind them doing that, but how actually physically putting tape on mouth is a bit too much for me. I mean, maybe that's what you're trying to ignite from the audience. Great if it is, you've done that, but it made me feel uncomfortable.
But would you be more comfortable with an actor trying to play someone with cerebral palsy? You'd be more comfortable with that?
Yeah, I don't know, something about tape is, I don't know.
And that's what we're sending out to do. We are sending out tonight. Not only non-disabled, but also disabled people think about this non-disabled people playing our parts. So the idea of somebody creeping up to play cerebral palsy, we want to point that out. And the tape is, I know I completely appreciate where you're coming from. But
can I also add to it, because we were short an actor, that's where that came from.
Okay.
And then we liked it. That kind of way we discovered that, and that's still a conversation. Is that what we want to do?
Yeah, and so it might be good if someone else put the tape on them, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
And you also used in rehearsal previously Julie eating a sandwich to distort the sound of the speech, and I really liked that. That really worked.
It reminds me of the physical restriction required in Beckett, Like we saw it with Lisa Dwan earlier, Bernadette showed us a clip from Not I, and her speech is distorted in a way because it's so fast and coming out of her, so it kind of, to me, was a way of normalising disability in a way, because that physical restriction is required of the actor, the non-disabled actor. That's how I read it anyway.
Can I just, the one thing I like about the tape is that, and there's loads of different reasons symbolically to do that, but one thing it strikes me as is that the tape over the mouth, and it's a very universal symbol, is a character with so much to say, but zip is society. It's taped up, you know what I mean? He's so restricted by that world around him that the tape is there, it's created.
I get that, and I think that if you were to do that, it might be more powerful if you got someone else like Vinny or Vincent the carer to do that. I know you play him too.
It's a good, but it's an interesting point though, because if it is distracting, then that's just interesting. It's an interesting reaction. To take into account,
We've had a similar reaction to the puppet, actually.
I love the puppet.
You see, isn't that because we've had the extreme other reaction from a person with an impairment going, I don't like that, which makes me want to do it more, because I love to break the rules. But we came across him. By the way, he's a prototype as well, I should say. Everything is prototype really at this time, so it's all up for grabs. But we're liking, the more rules we break, the more we like it. It seems, in text, in Peter's input, in how we present this show, just it'll disturb ourselves and disturb the content and disturb what theatre is. Not just for the sake of being bold, but wow, that makes me feel different, and this guy, he said the paraphernalia of, which, I grew up in the 60s as well, so all around me was this paraphernalia, and that's what drew me to this. And the guy who designed this prototype of puppet, when I heard Martin was a crutch user at 9 years of age, I went, oh my God, there's a puppet that's never been made. Simply, there's a puppet that's never been made, a puppet with crutches. And of course what it gives you is a whole different kind of movement. Like normally you'd have 5 puppeteers moving and walk a puppet properly, you know. And here I have different legs. It's like, you know, that excites me theatrically. That actually the crutches are his legs. It was my idea to put his face on. He didn't have a face. It was just kind of mesh by the designer. It was much better. We're going to take the face off again, actually. The more abstract he is, you know, the more we buy into it. That's the nature of art, isn't it? You know, abstract, it makes us, you know, jump further. And I put shoes and hands on him, meshed his body, took it off this morning, I stripped him down as much. We just love the mechanics. And this, you know, with Peter along with this paraphernalia as well, that's what the set might really pick up on, you know, the paraphernalia of whatever it is. Wheels, we're toying with the idea of putting the nun on wheels as well, so sort of bouncing off the wheels of a wheelchair, etc. You know, just
And pushing the
playful with it,
absurdity of it.
and anarchic, and yeah.
I think as well, like, I'm loving all the theatricality that the guys are doing, and I suppose I also, in relation to Mark's question, it has to be a good play. Like, it just has to work as a play, or else all the brilliance the guys are adding to it, you know, won't save it, kind of thing. So, you know, if there's any feedback in respect of the, you know, it's hard to assess it because you've seen it jumping around a bit. But anyway, that's if it's a good play, then we've got something we can build on, and you know, that's hopefully it will be. But if you've any reservations or questions or doubt, you know, because you responded to kind of more the staging than the play itself.
Yeah,
so if there's
sorry.
any, no, it's great.
No,
It's
good.
very all feedback is very welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually had a question about forms, you know, kind of anarchy, chaos was used earlier so provocatively by Peter, but yet the story seems to follow a kind of chronological, biographical narrative, so I'm wondering if there's going to be any play with that, or in the pieces that we haven't seen, is that disruptive?
I suppose it does follow a certain chronology. I suppose the question that hopefully is in the audience's mind is twofold. One, what happens to Martin, but also why is the Brendan character there? Who is he? Or rather, we find out who he is, but why does he appear at the start? What does that mean? And that brings us to a certain crisis in Martin's life, and that's, I think, where, you know, the shape only makes sense at the end, and until then it kind of doesn't. And hopefully the fact that it doesn't keeps the audience wanting to know what will happen next, because in a way, for me, it's if this play has to be a good story, and people have to know what's going to happen
That
next.
first scene is set in the mid-90s,
Yeah.
and then we go back to
60s.
yes,
Yeah.
and then we go forward
Yeah.
again. So it doesn't stand through.
So there's back and forth.
A little
But
bit.
I wonder, I mean, and what about the choice of Brendan to appear as able-bodied? Is that, I guess, in the afterlife?
Yeah, it's a good question.
It is a bit, yeah, and it's you know, I'm kind of personally not sure about that myself at all, because I'm a little bit uneasy about the fact that we show him as able-bodied
Maybe it doesn't make sense.
at the start, and yet it's kind of provocative.
Yeah.
But again, that'll be a conversation as well. I suppose that we'll kind of figure out as we go.
Yeah,
The
maybe you
fear
should be.
is, you know, when you go to heaven, you'll be able to walk. You know, that's the. But it's the theatricality of it that I like, actually. You know,
And
Yeah.
and it does work. It would work with muscular dystrophy because, like say if I died, like, and then I'm walking my own in heaven, it'd be weird to be like, where's Luke? Where's the walker? No, Luke has to come with me. But because the way the muscular dystrophy is, you are walking on your own, and then the disease hits. So it's like, you're back to kind of the natural state, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's good to know that there's an option to maybe come on in a chair and then you know get out.
Yeah.
You know, bend the rules after it's introduced or something like might be more.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
It's good though. It's good.
Okay, the legal point for that idea of people who acquire impairments and those that are born with impairments.
Yeah.
It's a different narrative. And also we're looking at the hierarchy of impairments. You saw the scene with Mark up there in the wheelchair, a man down there. So the idea that we're looking at class as well. That the Vinny character is a working class, rough character. There's trouble. I mean, it becomes more trouble later on. But it's very in your face.
Yeah.
Whereas the Albert character, who's in the wheelchair, is a middle class working male who happens to be in a wheelchair, but has all the power. And in a way, his power is actually more defeating and more dangerous than Vinny. So we're looking at class, we're looking at gender as well. Yeah.
A thought that came to my mind. Sorry, I'm monopolising the conversation here. A thought that came into my mind when I was watching it is, so the direct provision in town, they're doing a show as part of Galway TR Festival, and but basically direct provision. But they're also like the people that are in the show, they're from direct provision, but they're also playing the privileged white people in the show, and I think it might be interesting to see people in wheelchairs or walking aids, whatever, with disabilities, to basically be the asshole, the privileged people that you have to fight against.
Yeah.
Comment there, you?
Well, I'm sure that kind of picked up on what I was thinking about too, and I was thinking about something just more general, just because it's been brought up a lot today, this idea of really deviant dramaturgies and how, Bernadette talked about this, Shoshana, is that right? Talked about queer dramaturgies, and I just wonder if there's sort of this like bigger theme that we're talking about today that maybe Christian and the group advising this piece of it might have some visions for, just in terms of a bigger picture about disabled dramaturgies and how we can use form itself to disrupt, just to fight against the just normative storytelling. So I don't know if that's the goal, or that's kind of there's kind of a meta layer in there in terms of what we're doing with form, in terms of trying to disrupt what we're used to.
Well, we're still in, the play's still in development in that sense, so it's hard to know where it'll go, or whether it'll stay kind of as it is, or whether it'll explode in its form or shape or chronology, for example. But I'm kind of open to that, but not without having the answer to it. But I do hear what you're saying, and I suppose personally in my own storytelling, I love a beginning, a middle, and end. I love engaging an audience in that way. I love character transformation, these things. But that doesn't mean that's the only way to tell a story, for sure, or the only way to tell a narrative, say.
But I think you're saying an outcome that we hope will be the identification of need for disability dramaturgy, in mainstream theatre. So that'll be just to identify it with the great.
Yeah, I think I'm really intrigued by that question, because there's this question with any kind of, to use the days word, deviant performance, is like, do we use a traditional structure in order to lure our audience in and then slap them, or do we create something entirely new that really represents, and form is such a radical way to do that, right? Because it's that thing that's so holy with our 3 acts or our 2 acts, or our beginning, middle, and end. And I guess I come from that real traditional, even in an identity sense, I come from that real traditional perspective. So I just wonder, I don't know, how is that of interest, and what is that? It'll be really interesting to discover.
I think the very fact that we're here having this discussion almost answers that to some degree, because it's not that mean, obviously there is a need for a change in story and narrative and perspective and character, all that kind of stuff. But I think, now maybe it's just a westernized phenomena, I don't know. Or maybe it's the advent of social media and information and education is sort of more accessible. But I feel that there is a groundswell. Maybe I'm optimistic and naive, but I feel like even in the film industry, there is a natural, I guess, gravitation to this conversation that we're having. And I think Christian's play and his previous work is just, I guess, a reflection of that change in society, that change in perspective. So I don't think we are in many respects activists, but we're artists first. And it's funny that we spend so much time talking about the practicals and the logistics and that, and we're really just telling stories at the end of the day. And that's what's happening. Stories are the same, but just how we portray the characters in there is what's actually fundamentally changing. So although it is a radical concept, because even Raymond has huge concepts in terms of not just how we portray the story, but how it's presented to the audience and how they engage with it. So there is radical or even revolutionary concepts, but when you strip that away, it's very basic what we're doing. We're just creating art and stories, and with that comes the education and the inspiration and all those other great things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think that was quite adequately put. Thank you very much. And I do think that's a good place to finish today, because we have run out of time, unfortunately, and I think it's a conversation that could go on for much, much longer, but unfortunately time's got the better of us. Thank you so much to all the members of the panel. Everyone could give them a round of applause.